A gifted young woman was known for her devotion to preserving her Native American heritage. After graduating with a degree in political science, she returned to Humboldt County to serve her community. But following an abusive relationship, postpartum psychosis, and a descent into drug use, her mental health rapidly deteriorated. Despite repeated encounters with law enforcement and psychiatric holds, she was released time and time again. In October 2021, she vanished from the remote Yurok Reservation, last seen near a place ominously called End of Road. A crude map later claimed she was buried under a rock, sparking years of searches by family, volunteers, and cadaver dogs. Though promising leads emerged, no trace of her was ever found. Welcome to Without a Trace. I'm your host, Jalen. Every file holds a mystery. Every story deserves to be heard. This is Emilee's story. On February 19, 1989, Emmilee Risling was born to Gary and Judy Risling. Emmilee was raised alongside her younger sister Mary in McKinleyville, a small town along the rural coast of California. She was a member of the Hoopa Valley tribe with Yurok and Carrick lineage as well. Emmilee felt a deep responsibility to preserve her Native American culture. She was a perpetual figure at tribal ceremonies, known for dancing with an unassuming grace. Her singing voice, both lifting and haunting, was known to move a crowd. She was just 15 years old when she ended up on the front page of the Washington Post for an article about the opening of the National Museum of the American Indian. Emmilee was caring and thoughtful. In high school, she had been a standout student, excelling in AP courses, serving as president of her class all 4 years, and volunteering twice to organize a regional conference. She was known for her well-spoken nature. Once, to promote a raffle, she persuaded a dealership to donate a car. It came as no surprise when she earned several scholarships. She went off to the University of Oregon to study political science. She graduated in 2014 with plans to become a lawyer. After college, Emmilee returned to McKinleyville, where she worked in social services, helping indigent families in need of assistance. She volunteered with Native organizations like the Native Women's Collective. Emmilee was also a devoted mother to her son from a college relationship. She coached his t-ball team, carted him to jiu-jitsu classes, and threw him elaborate birthday parties. But Emmilee dated haphazardly and began seeing a man who was emotionally and physically abusive. Emmilee told her friends about times he would spit in her face or dump a bottle of alcohol on her head. Deputies investigated him at least once for allegedly assaulting Emmilee in May of 2020, but no charges came of it. After the birth of her daughter in 2020, Emmilee showed signs of postpartum psychosis and schizophrenia. Her children were placed in the care of her mother, and she began staying with a friend on the Humboldt Reservation. She began smoking meth and surrounding herself with addicts. The drugs seemed to trigger a new persona. Emmilee began talking to herself, making nonsensical statements, and lashing out. Her parents were bewildered by her rapid deterioration and believed she developed a mental illness that was compounded by drug use and domestic abuse. The police stopped her numerous times for walking around naked in public, but never charged her. Towards the end of 2020, Emmilee was spotted by a friend in the grocery store. She appeared frazzled and breathless, as if she had just fled an unsafe situation. With her son by her side, Emmilee clutched her infant daughter to her chest. She went to pay for baby formula and bottles, but her credit card was declined. Her friend handed her some cash and never saw her again. In 2021 alone, the Humboldt County Sheriff's Office received nearly 24 calls for service concerning Emmilee. Deputies placed her on an involuntary psychiatric hold several times. Clinics on the reservation offered minimal mental health services. The only inpatient psychiatric hospital within 300 miles had only 16 beds. The few times Emmilee was taken there, she was released. Her friends explained she would be having a mental episode, but once she arrived at the hospital, she could talk her way out of having to be admitted. In September 2021, tribal officers responded to a small fire at a cemetery on the Humboldt Reservation and found Emmilee without clothes. She was picked up by a friend and taken to the friend's house where she stayed the night. The next evening, county deputies showed up at the friend's house to arrest Emmilee. At her court hearing, the Humboldt police chief referred to Emmilee as a nuisance in need of mental support. A probation officer recommended that the court deny her release. Her parents were present that day and hoped for the same, but the judge noted that Emmilee had no prior convictions and allowed her supervised release. She was ordered to return for the next court date. Her father's heart sank at the judge's decision, stating she had no cell phone, no money, no car, no nothing. How in the heck are you going to expect her to show up at some hearing in a week? Days after her release, Emmilee vanished. The last time anyone saw Emmilee Risling was on October 14, 2021. Emilee's car had been stolen, so she had been hitchhiking. Among the last places she was seen was Pequon Bridge, which stretches over a creek near the river. Residents also reported that she had been a mile north of there in an isolated area known as End of Road, a far corner of the Yurok Reservation where the pavement dissolves into thick woods. Emilee's family members wanted a search conducted immediately after her disappearance, but the Yurok Tribal Police consisted of only 5 officers and 2 command staff. They were not trained in search and rescue operations and were ill-equipped for the situation at hand. The chief of the department would later explain, "We just didn't have the resources. The thoroughness of the search would have been questioned." The last known locations of Emmilee, he added, were far too apart to be helpful. Emmilee went missing from the Yurok Reservation. The reservation stretches like a jagged scar across Humboldt and Del Norte counties in Northern California, nearly 56,000 acres, much of it layered in dense, hilly forests. Main roads are few and far between, and cell service is either spotty or non-existent. Emilee's father asked the Humboldt County Sheriff's Office, which has about 100 deputies and a volunteer search and rescue team, to take over the investigation. But due to jurisdiction, he was referred back to the tribal police. A few months after Emmilee went missing, her parents received a map. It was crudely drawn, sketched in ink, and on lined notebook paper. Slashed lines indicated roads, and a rectangle marked a fire station. An acquaintance had passed the map along from an anonymous tipster who had a chilling message for Gary and Judy. Their daughter was buried there, under a rock. Emilee's mother became totally fixated on the map and sent it to anyone she thought might care. It wasn't until April 2022, 6 months after Emmilee disappeared, that a coordinated search had begun, initiated by a wilderness safety nonprofit based in Minnesota. A team of cadaver dogs, canine handlers, volunteers, and law enforcement personnel set out on boats and all-terrain vehicles. On the third and final day, handlers directed their 2 best dogs to the area mapped out by the tipster. It was up a hillside in a village known as Watek, not far from End of Road. Dexter, a spaniel, became animated about one particular spot, but did not offer what is known as a trained final response. It was early in the day, damp and cool, the best conditions for picking up a scent. The second dog arrived when the sun was high and did not have the same reaction. One of the canine managers explained if they had been called in immediately, they would have better chances of tracking Emilee's scent. Before leaving, the team advised that the area continued to be explored. 3 years would pass before another canine team followed up on the search for Emmilee. Julia Oliveira arrived in March 2023 in hopes of finding answers about Emilee's case, which had languished in the sheriff's cold case unit run by 2 retired investigators. Julia saw a cast of characters who had already given their statements to police, like the mechanic who lives at End of Road, who was among the last to see Emmilee alive, and the brother and sister nearby who said they had given Emmilee a place to rest, and that she mentioned wanting to visit a remote village on the reservation known as Apa. Julia did not glean much from this investigation, but she did find a partner, Emilee's cousin, Alana Wright. Alana was a paralegal for the Yurok Tribal Court and had been on a committee tasked with researching the missing and murdered epidemic. Missing and murdered Indigenous people is a crisis which refers to the disproportionately high rates of violence experienced by Indigenous people within the United States and Canada. Just 3.5% of the total U.S. population identifies as Native American, though their death rate by homicide is 5 times higher than that of whites. In 2023, about 10,650 reports of missing Indigenous people were entered into the FBI's National Crime Information Center. That number is believed to be inaccurately low, as many cases are poorly documented. By early 2023, Alana had created a drone program for the tribe and was certified by the Federal Aviation Administration as a drone pilot. She also had a grant-funded drone with a thermal imaging camera that could sense body heat. The goal of this program was to find missing people. Together, Julia and Alana continued the search for Emmilee, walking hours in the brush, launching the drone in a promising area, and even following up on the vision of a medium who said Emmilee was buried in a rock quarry. Their work got noticed and tips began trickling in. On an overcast morning in April, Julia and Alana followed the map drawn by the tipster a few years ago. It took them near end of road and up a steep hill. Joining them were 2 canine handlers. They brought along what are known as historic human remain detection dogs, which are trained to trace much fainter odors than search and rescue dogs. The group was on a wooded slope where the road splits into two when Trooper sniffed and froze. He had a hit. He was guided away but returned to the same spot several times. When the second dog, Kane, was allowed to meander, he reacted to the same location. Julia notified the tribal police chief but was told she needed more data. No law enforcement showed up. Julia returned with ground-penetrating radar. It showed an anomaly about 10 feet away from the site, but a small excavation revealed only a dense tangle of roots. The tribal police chief and a team conducted a follow-up excavation. They determined that the ground had not been disturbed for at least 2 decades and that the dogs had been influenced by an old family graveyard down the hill. Emmilee was never found, and her case continues to be investigated. The Yurok tribe is the largest tribe in California, with 6,500 members, but its reservation is less than 2/3 the size of Hoopa, and much of the land is not actually owned by the tribe. The Yurok have one tiny seasonal casino, a modest hotel, and 3 gas stations. Most of their funding is received through grants. Shortly after Emmilee went missing, 7 women reported being approached by possible traffickers, prompting the tribe to issue an emergency declaration. The tribe has since established a prosecutor's office and advocated state funding for tribes to address missing and murdered Indigenous people. It helped sponsor the bill that created Feather Alerts, a statewide emergency system that notifies the public when an Indigenous person goes missing. The tribe was also awarded a grant to build a wellness center that will include mental health services. Thank you for listening to Without a Trace. I hope you enjoyed our deep dive into Emilee's disappearance. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe and follow Without a Trace on social media. Join me next week as I dive into another case.